Hello, lore nerds! Today, we're going to cover one of my favorite deities, Corellon Larethian. Now, I know I just did a video on Saloon, so I promise a video on Shar will be on its way, but the brain bugs told me to do Corellon today. So who is Corellon? Corellon is the primary god of elves, leader of the Seldarine pantheon, and honestly just a really awesome deity. As the embodiment of being an elf, Corellon is multiple things at once: a warrior, poet, bard, artist, mage, male and female, and yes, that is something. Corellon can freely assume male and female forms at will, and has been known to do so, with this even being a thing in quite early editions. So, shout out to non binary and gender fluid people. In fact, this lore of him being gender fluid stretches back to the first edition Advanced D&D sourcebook, Deities and Demigods, which was published in 1980, so that's pretty awesome. On the topic of that, if you'll allow me to indulge in some neat lore, 5th edition introduced a very cool little thing in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. It is a characteristic called Blessed of Corellon, and allows an elf character to change their sex anytime they complete a long rest, which is just a very neat little feature, and fits well with Corellon's lore. However, his love for Arushni, who we will get more into later, and I did talk about my Loth video, so if you want to know more about her, watch that video. In his love for her, he did settle on a more male form, hence why I'm primarily calling him he, although I'm sure Corellon would go by any pronouns really. He was known to take forms of other genders, but primarily, his primary form was this male one, which is described as an androgynous male elf of lithe build and supernatural beauty. He was also quite tall, often around 2.1 meters or 7 feet tall, exceptionally fast and very nimble and agile, as you would expect for, the most elf ever to elf. He would also appear wearing a sky blue cloak, an amulet depicting a crescent moon, and dazzling gauntlets, so this elf definitely has style. In terms of personality, Corellon was extremely chaotic. In fact, he is essentially the embodiment of chaotic good. While he did have the standard elven pride that nearly borders on arrogance, common to most elves, Corellon never let that get the best of them, for the most part at least. They are a god with great willingness to learn from others and grow, even valuing mortals as sources of new ideas and philosophies. He also comes with some neat abilities. As the quintessential elf, he is a master swordsman and adept mage. He wields his long sword with expert skill and is a master of archery. He can cast spells from all spheres and schools and is able to cast high elven ritual spells as if they were just normal spells. He could also summon 1 to 4 air elementals every 10 minutes that served him for as long as he needed them to. He is immune to anything that inhibits their movement, messed with their mind, as well as all illusion spells. Corellon, of course, has some powerful possessions. Among them is the sword Sahandrian, an enchanted longsword that causes immense pain to any other than Corellon who tries to wield it, and especially to goblinoids, because Corellon really doesn't like goblins, I guess. He also has Amlathana, an enchanted longbow that never misses a target within 1 mile, and is considerably more powerful than a standard longbow. His quiver also has an endless supply of arrows, which is very useful. Their amulet worked like an amulet of pure good, meaning that if someone evil tried to wear it, the ground beneath them would crack open and they'd be swallowed into the center of the planet. They also have a wand that works like a staff of power, staff of the Magi, and wand of frost all at once with unlimited charges. And this means it can cast, and be prepared because this is a lot, Magic Missile, Levitate, Wall of Force, Globe of Invulnerability, Hold Monster, Lightning Bolt, Fireball, Cone of Cold, Detect Magic, Enlarge Person, Hold Portal, Light, Mage Armor, Mage Hand, Dispel Magic, Ice Storm, Invisibility, Knock, Pass Wall, Pyrotechnics, Wall of Fire, whip, plane shift, telekinesis, wall of ice, make enemies enfeebled, and create a continual flame. All of those spells with unlimited charges. So yeah, that's it's kind of crazy. Corellon makes their home in Arvandor, the first layer of Arborea. Arborea as a whole, which is also known as Olympus, is a chaotic good realm filled with nature and beauty and very sylvan in nature. Arvandor specifically is basically the home of the Seldarine pantheon. It is a wonderful land of huge forests, mountains, clear streams, beautiful lakes, and an ocean known as the Sparkling Sea. Any elf who worshipped the Seldarine, which is essentially most elves, would go to Arvandor after death. One of Corellon's favorite activities is wandering the material plane in disguise, watching over elves. He often patrols elven borders and in general acts as a guardian to the elves. So now that we have a good idea of who Corellon is and what they are like, let's get into their history. Before the Seldarine Wars long, long ago, Corellon was born in the plain of Ysgard. After some time of living there, Corellon decided to conquer a plane of Arborea. In doing so, Corellon drove out the resident giants and founded Arvandor. The surviving giants fled and made their way to Jotunheim in Ysgard. Not long after this, Corellon met and married Arushni, and this is when Corellon settled on his androgynous male gold elf form as his most common appearance. This was to create a duality with her, male and female, warrior and artist, day and night, all that kind of stuff. He also gave dominion of the Dark Elves, who were not yet the Drow, to Arushni. Together they had two children, the elder Veyron and the younger Elistre. By this point, Corellon already had a bitter rivalry with the god Gruumsh, god of orcs. Some legends say this started with Corellon rigging lots against Gruumsh so that he and his children would be disadvantaged. The two gathered at a negotiations table where Gruumsh attacked and destroyed Sahandrian. Corellon did fight back, but lost. This was both due to elven arrogance and something he did not know. There was a traitor and impostor among them. Corellon's own wife, Arushni, conspired against him and caused his sword to break. Now, if you want to know a bit more of why the hell Arushni would do that, I recommend my video on Lolth where I go a bit more into her side of things. While fleeing to Arvandor, Gruumsh tracked the elf god down, but Sahani Moonbow, goddess of moonlight, restored his strength and fixed his sword. Gruumsh and Corellon fought, and eventually Corellon disarmed the orc god and gouged out his eye. However, the battle ended because Corellon could not kill an unarmed and wounded opponent. In elven myth, Corellon's blood from this battle and Sahanin's tears mixed together and formed the first elves. Once back home, Corellon was assaulted by Melar, god of the hunt and bestial savagery, who was persuaded by Arushni to attack the god. They fought and Corellon won. Arushni further attempted to kill Corellon by forming an army of those who hate the Seldarine, such as the Goblin, Bugbear, and Kobold pantheons. She did expect those armies to lose, as this was not actually the true plan, more of a distraction-y thing. Arushni and Veyron tricked Elistre into giving Corellon a cursed scabbard that draws arrows to the wielder. However, Corellon was already aware of the traitor. When Ganadar, god of oozes and abominations, appeared, Corellon realized how depraved the traitor must be, for Ganadar can only enter Arvandor when there is a great evil there. During the battle, Corellon was attacked by an ogre god and tried to draw his sword, but it got stuck in the scabbard. Then Elistre's arrows hit him, but he was saved by two things: his sturdy ribs, and the fact that Elistre's ogre-killing arrows were too big to fit between Corellon's ribs. Arushni then tried to poison Corellon, but he was again saved by Sahanin Moonbow. So, Sahanin's quite a nice deity, it seems. After the battle was over and Corellon was healed, Arushni and Veyron were put on trial. The two of them were then obviously exiled for their crimes. During the first flowering, Corellon and the rest of the Seldarine aided the elves in creating Evermeet by sundering the continent, thus creating a home for the elves. It was then during the Crown Wars that Corellon turned the Dark Elves into the Drow and forced them into the Underdark. After the spellplay, Corellon actually stayed a greater deity, retaining their power. Unfortunately, it was not the same for the other Seldarine gods, as they did lose quite a bit of power. So with that, we have covered Corellon, the main elven god and leader of the Seldarine, and quite possibly my favorite deity. I want to take this moment to thank you all. Seeing you guys enjoy my videos means a lot to me. Recently, I did a poll to see what I should do for my next video, which would be this one, and most of you voted for Forgotten Realms lore, which I am very happy to deliver. I love the Forgotten Realms. However, a couple people did vote for Elder Scrolls lore, so if that is something you guys would like me to do alongside Forgotten Realms lore, do let me know. In general, if you have suggestions, do tell me in the comments and I will try to cover them in future videos. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.